Okay, so a couple things that I want to go over. I'm going to start recording now, um, just so if you have questions, you can go back to the video to watch this for any information uh, that I may have missed. So first and foremost, I want to make sure that you talk to your parents about this. This is important because this is something that I don't want it to wait until it comes up in conversation. I want you to make sure that you tell them like today. Um, and again, it's just because I've gotten a couple of emails, um, but I've already given you guys the information. So now I have to keep repeating the information. So just make sure you tell them today, because if something does come up and they see something, you've already given them the other information. So what does that mean? Mrs. Daly sent out an email to the listserv of office hours for the summer. And in those office hours, they are going to be closed tomorrow and Friday due to maintenance. Okay, so who can tell me why that is not an issue? Even though the office is closed. Who remembered what I told you? Oh boy, I think this is why I got emails. No one remembers? What's Friday?
We turn in our books.
Yes, that's one, Lauren. What else? For some of you.
Pick up certificates.
Certificate day. Yeah, graduation day from the class. So why is that not going to be a problem even though the offices are going to be closed? Nobody remembers what I told you? Okay. So again, I will be there on Friday. Even though the offices are closed, I will be there. I did talk to Mrs. Daly. Let me verify the email that she sent me. Okay, so yeah, it's the maintenance is for technology. They're just doing some stuff to the servers and everything like that, so that'll affect them being there, but it won't affect me being there. So with that in mind, I will be out there, but I will only be out there till about noon. My office hours, again, as I put on the Google Classroom, it's 7 to 8 Monday through Thursday, and then 10 to 12 on Friday. So obviously at 10 o'clock, our class is done and my office hours begin. So I will be there from 10 to 12 to pick up or to be there to collect your books if you want to drop them off then. And I will be out there from 10 to 12 to give you your certificates. So for those of you who want to get your permit right away and need that certificate, then you can come out there at that time. For those of you who do not need a certificate because you got your permit, you then don't have to be out there on Friday. But it still would be nice if I can get everyone to come out there and at least drop off their book. So Mrs. Daly doesn't have to do all that work later on. I'd like to just be able to take care of all of that right away so it's not an issue. So whether you need to pick up a certificate or not, it would be good to at least stop by and drop off your stuff. So yeah, even though that the offices are going to be closed, I will be there. My plan is to be there in the Commons, to give you what you need and then collect your books. So make sure that you tell your parents that if you need to go out on Friday, even though the offices are closed, I will still be there. So make sure that's taken care of. Next, we have a schedule change tomorrow. I'm going to go over this real quick. But normally every day what we've done is we've kind of gone through our normal routine. We do articles, we do attendance, we then review for the chapter tests. We go over questions, have a discussion, and then you take the test. And then usually by then, that's the end of class. And I told you about presentations that I'm going to create videos outside of class for you to watch. But we have one exception. And this presenter is always going to be the exception. I talked to her yesterday and she asked if she could just join the Zoom. Okay, so tomorrow we are not going to have a regular class period. Now, that presents a problem because we have to do chapter 9. And in the time frame that we'll have, we won't have time to do 9 and 10 on Friday. So here's what we're going to do. The change, anytime we make changes like this, it's always going to benefit you. So your assignment for tomorrow is going to be to obviously do everything for chapter 10, read and take notes, but the chapter 9 tests, you're going to take outside of class. Okay, so I am pulling all restrictions on the chapter 9 test. Okay. It's open book, open notes. Obviously, you're not going to be in class, so you don't have to be on video. So your assignment is to get the chapter 9 test turned in. Okay, there are no restrictions on taking the chapter 9 tests. Okay, so hopefully you pick up what I'm putting down for you. Nobody's on video, so if you don't understand, please ask now. All right, I assume you understand then. The downside is we're not going to review for the chapter 9 tests tomorrow before you take the chapter 9 tests. That is the only downside. However, today's assignment is to read and take notes for the chapter 9 test. So if you do have legitimate questions for me, you have an out. Your assignment is to do that today and you have all day to do it. I will be on from 7 to 8 tonight, as usual, on my office hour Zoom. So if you do have legitimate questions, please jump on Zoom and ask and get those taken care of. I will make sure that wherever I'm at tonight, I'm supposed to be working at the house tonight, replacing a window, but I will make sure I'll bring my textbook with me. So if you do have legitimate questions about specific things in the chapter, I will be there to answer your questions. please, if you do jump on to the Zoom, I usually get an email that says attendees are waiting, but I don't always see that right away. So if you do decide to jump on the Zoom right away, please be patient and wait, and I will eventually get on there. Claire, I'll answer any questions that you have. I know you got on last night. I was eventually on there, but by the time I saw that you got on Zoom, you were gone by the time I got on there. So, or if you can, just send me an email, and if you need a specific time to be on there, I can look for that as well. So if it's, hey, I'll get on Zoom at 7:20 tonight. Okay. So then I'll make sure that when 7:20 rolls around, I'm actually looking at my phone. Because usually I always leave the Zoom on from 7 to 8. It's just I don't sit and stare at it for an hour. I've got other stuff I do. So, as far as Chapter 9 notes and studying, that's tonight. If you have questions, ask tonight. Your job will be to take the Chapter 9 test outside of school tomorrow. Okay? So hopefully that answers your question, Ben. And again, no restrictions on the test. Just get it turned in tomorrow after class. All right, so any questions on those things? Okay, so tomorrow, what we're going to do in class is Liz is going to do her presentation tomorrow, and she's going to present in class. So with that, one thing I will ask you to do is to be respectful to her. I do want you to be on video tomorrow, if at all possible. I know if you have legitimate technical difficulties with your video, I understand, but I would like you to, if your video is working, I would like you to be on video tomorrow, just so she can see that you are being attentive during the presentation. I'm not saying that people would do this, but I also worry that, oh, we have a presenter tomorrow, so I'm just not going to worry about being on video, and I'll just leave my phone on and then go do other stuff, or I'll leave my computer on and I'll do other stuff, and then it's kind of a way of skipping class. It's not to say that any of you would do that, but again, I need to make sure that you meet the requirements of the hours. So I do ask that you be on video tomorrow during the presentation. All right, so of all the presenters that I have, she's the one that I will make any exception for, just so she can have the opportunity to talk to you guys. That's how much your presentation means to me. It's not to say that I wouldn't do it for anyone else. It's just she asked, she's like, well, could I just jump on your Zooms tomorrow and do my presentation? And again, like you said, like I told you, we don't have time to do that. But I really feel like you need to hear her message. So I will make every exception so that she can be here to talk to you guys. And she knows that I'll do that because her talking to you guys means a lot to me. So with that, please be ready for tomorrow. Again, I think you'll get a lot of good information out of it. She's awesome. So that's what tomorrow's class will look like. So either way, we'll get through it. You won't have any additional issues. We'll get done on time. That won't make anything change as far as that goes. And like I said, it's the advantage is to you guys. So with that, the last thing I have is during class today, some of you will notice some more assignments popping up. as I work on getting those done, there is a presentation that is out there already. The Abate course is out there. And eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the assignment on Google Classroom today. They're very simple assignments. It will take you longer, way longer to watch the presentation than it will to do the assignment. So I tried to think of the best way to get you to let me know that you did in fact watch the video all the way through. So I'm just going to have you write a reflection. So before you get all worried about having to write several papers before the end of the class, that's not the case. I'm just going to ask you to write a 1-paragraph reflection, and I've already set up the body for you in how I want it to be written. I just have like 3 or 4 questions that I want you to answer. I don't want it to be a long reflection. Please don't write me a 1-page reflection, because number one, I'm going to read all these, and I'm going to read all the different ones that you do. And again, if you just answer the questions, then you get the points for it. Easy enough. So I have 2 presentations already set up. I now just need to get the assignments into Google Classroom, but that's all they're going to be, is just a reflection. What did you think of the presentation? What did you like? What did you not like? And how does this change how you perceive driving based on their presentation? That's pretty much your reflection. So for those of you who can type fairly easy, it's going to take you like 3 or 4 minutes to do the assignment. It's not going to take long at all. So, but again, please don't think that you have to write this 1-page deal for you to get the points. It needs to be a paragraph. Okay. If you feel like you need to add in information, then by all means do. I mean, if your reflection ends up being a half a page because you really want to write a half a page and give me your thoughts, okay, that's fine. But don't do it because you feel like you need to do it to get all the points. Because honestly, I could care less about you writing extra words just so you feel like you're validating your points, because I really don't care. Just tell me what I need to know, and we'll call that good, as I know most of you will. So any questions on all that information? Again, I recorded this portion of the Zoom, so if you need to go back and look at something, it's going to be on video. All right, then with that, Chapter 8, what questions do you have?
Can you explain space margins?
Absolutely. Give me 1 second here. All right. Sorry, I was just uploading the first class's Zoom to YouTube. All right, space margins. In particular, what page are you on here? 168?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I guess pretty much the whole first part of the chapter is space and space margins. So two big keywords for this or for this particular chapter: space and time. If you want to be a safe driver, you need to make sure that you create space. If you want to be a safe driver, you need to make sure that you create time. And both are married together. If you create space, you also create time. So for example, following distance. If you create a wider space from the car in front of you to you, the more space you have, if they do something unexpected, you now have more time to react. If you narrow that space, then you narrow your reaction time. So on 167, you have a vehicle that shows kind of your space zones. There are actually more zones to that because you have your front, back, your left, and your right, but you also have 4 more zones of here, 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 and here as well. They don't really spend time talking about that, but that's not a big deal. But obviously you want to make sure that you have space on all 4 of those main sides. And in some cases, you don't have to worry about it. So for example, this vehicle driving doesn't have to worry about the space on the right because there's nothing to the right of them other than the fact they want to make sure they stay on the road, because if they compromise space there, now you're looking at the shoulder and the ditch. Whereas your space to the left, front, and rear are going to be more important. So the idea behind that is creating space creates safer distances, which allows you to create more time. So for example, in most situations when you're driving, is you always want to make sure that you create space in front of you, because the space in back, the space behind you, most of the time you cannot control. Easily thought, can you control how far somebody stops behind you? It's not really possible. So what you can control is how much space you have in the vehicle in front of you and to the sides of you. So in most situations when you're driving, you always want to make sure that you have space available in front of you and to at least one of your sides. Okay, you usually want both of those to be in an optimal situation if things look bad or there's some type of conflict, because that will always leave you an out. In the last curriculum we had, they always talk about leaving yourself an out. They don't really talk about that here, but they do. They just don't say leaving yourself an out. They just say create space. Have space in front of you, have space on the side of you, so it does leave you an out. If you need to change lanes in a short amount of time, you have to make sure that those spaces are available to you. Because if you don't, you can be the problem by trying to avoid a problem. So if that makes sense. Does that help answer your question? Is that Ben that asked that?
Yeah, that helps.
Okay. So one of the questions that one of the students asked in the first Zoom was that table on 168. So the idea is, the big takeaway from that, the table itself is not on the test, obviously, but the big takeaway from that is, obviously, as you look down the chart, the speed increases. And for those of you that can't quite see it, I'm looking at this table here. As your speed increases, so does everything else in terms of distance. Your perception time, the time that it takes you to recognize an issue, that increases. The time that it takes you to respond to that. So you gather the information and then you have to process it to be able to react. That usually is about the same amount of time. And then your reaction is typically going to be to stop. So deer comes out in the road, you see the deer, then you have to process that and then respond by braking to avoid the deer. And typically your reaction time is 1/2 to 3/4 of a second. But the longer the time, the more distance you're going to travel, which is what they have there, is those traveling distance times. And then your braking distance, which is usually going to be more than your process and reaction time. So that fifth column, the total stopping distance, again, so that first one at 20 miles an hour, 45 feet, that's a minimum. That's if you recognize something right away, you perceive it right away, you react right away, and you stop right away. 45 feet, okay? That is optimal. That's why they say 59 is going to be on the maximum side of that, but they put a plus sign next to each one because that's just assuming that you react on the slower end at 3/4 of a second. Some of you may perceive something and not really react right away. You're just kind of in a zone. So that can delay the reaction time. So those are the big takeaways from that table, as that table can seem fairly confusing. The 3-second zone and the 4-second zone, I really didn't find anything in the reading that really explains what that is. So I'm not really worried about it. It's not on your test. So I'm just more focused on the faster you go, the more distance you have to be able to stop. All right, what else do you guys got?
Can you explain the choice of travel path in the picture on 174?
Yeah, you bet. Okay. I can understand why this might be confusing. They're talking about this in reference to lane changes, because I will tell you right now, R1 and L1, you should never drive in those positions. Those should be lane change positions as you are transitioning. But obviously with those positions, you need to make sure that you have that space available if you are going to move closer to that line. What I will tell you is they would consider this to be LRC, left side, right side, center. But they do the L1 and the L half and the R1 and the R half. But those are not driving positions, in my opinion. In the old curriculum, we used 1, 2, and 3. One is hugging the center line. Okay, so this is showing like a 3-lane. I'm going to look at the picture below this because this is where it'll be more ideal to look at 1, 2, and 3, Carly. Okay, so 1 would hug this middle line here. 2 is where the red car is currently centered. And 3 would hug the shoulder line, that white solid line. Okay, what they're showing you is, in my opinion, going from position 2 to position 1. So going to the center to going towards the center line. And the idea behind that is to create space. So they're showing that that maneuver of going towards the center to moving more towards the left is because as a driver, you can see the intersection coming up, but in this picture here, so I'll hold it up just in case some of you don't have your book open. What's the issue at that intersection? Can somebody tell me?
It's blocked. Like
It's
the site is blocked right near the curb.
Yep, by what?
Like a shrub or something, a bush.
Yeah. A tree or a bush or, whatever it is. So what they're doing is they're moving over closer to the center line. So for a number of different reasons. Number one, if they move over a little bit more, if there was another vehicle in that intersection, they can see them sooner. They also moved over to the left because if the vehicle doesn't see them and pulls out, they can see that vehicle pulling out sooner. And they're also moving towards the center line to give themselves space if that does happen. So that would be a good reason for that move towards the center line. They're not over the line or anything like that. And again, same thing for the opposite. If somebody were trying to pass you, you would want to move over to the shoulder side of the lane just to create that space. Because somebody asked in the last class the question that you should maintain 8 feet between vehicles if you're going in the same lane. So the idea is most roads, 2-lane roads, are, they said 18 to 24 feet wide, which means each lane is 9 to 12 feet. And she's like, well, I don't really understand the math on that because if lanes are 9 to 12 feet, how are you supposed to stay 8 feet apart? It's like, okay, well, that makes sense because when you are crossing here, you want that 8 feet in between, okay? So most vehicles are about 6 feet wide. So the idea is this car would be optimal if it stays in position 3 or hugging the shoulder line. This car would be optimal if it hugs the shoulder line. Okay, so now you get that approximate 8 feet in between both cars. Does that mean that every car you come into contact with, you always need to move over? No, it just needs to be that you maintain safe space. If you see a car that's hugging that center line, then yeah, it would be a good idea if you go and hug the shoulder line. Just because you don't know what their situation is. Are they distracted? Is that why they're over the center line? Or are they just driving on the center line to drive on the center line? I've seen both because I've seen some that are hugging that center line because they're distracted and then they slowly start moving over that center line. And you want to make sure that you move over a little bit because you don't want to be in the situation where you hit them. Obviously, you want to avoid collisions at all costs. All right, so I'm not really worried about the halves. That's not on the test. In my opinion, the haves are looking down the road to make sure that your intended path of travel is clear to be able to move into that lane. Okay. So that would be if I'm driving, I'm in the middle. You can see my head is centered in the middle of my screen. So I'm driving behind another vehicle, but I can't see down the road. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over so I can see, okay, that left lane is clear. Okay, turn signal, move to the left and move over to the left lane. And you always want to make sure you check that. Not necessarily for cars because cars are also moving, but you might want to check to see, okay, is that lane closing because of construction? Is there something in the road? Is there any issue that might make me not want to move into that lane? So they're just positioning the cars as I would position looking over to see. Okay. Does that help, Carly? I know that doesn't specifically
Yeah, thank you.
not all of them, but like I said, that won't be on the test, but that's why people do move over. So, okay, good deal. All right, what else?
Excuse me. On 175, it says stay out of packs. Like, what's the dangers of being in those kinds of situations?
Okay, so do you understand the concept of packs?
Yes.
Okay. Wolves travel in packs, which just means that you have a group close together, right? You want to avoid traveling in packs as a car, because what happens when you travel close together? What are you giving up? Anyone?
Your following distance?
Your following distance, more in general, you're giving up your space. And when you give up space, like I said earlier, you give up time. You give up your time to react. So if you travel in packs, that can be your risk level is going to go up. And especially because when a situation like that happens, you are only really able to control yourself as far as driving. You can't control how other people drive. So if they follow close to you, there might be situations where you can't really control that. So that's why they say to try and separate yourself from a pack of vehicles. Now, if you're sitting in traffic because traffic is backed up, that's not what they're talking about. They're just talking about a group of vehicles who travel close to each other. And I can give you a couple of examples of this, and maybe some of you might think like, oh, wow, I thought my parents were the only ones that did this, or whatever. Maybe you didn't realize that this is the case. If you are traveling with a group of people in several cars, that's kind of like traveling in a pack. You just want to make sure that, yes, you can all travel together in different cars, but just make sure you space yourselves out appropriately and you're not like that close together. Sometimes people like to speed. Okay, they like to go fast, but what they're looking for is they're looking for a speed buddy. Okay, and all right, camera's on real quick. I want to poll. Okay, not looking to call anyone out, not looking to have anyone call their parents out or anything like that. But how many of you have driven with somebody who was following somebody because they were going faster than the speed limit? Okay, Ben, your hand was up. Celia, was your hand up? thought I saw a hand, but I couldn't quite tell. No? Okay. All right. So people will do this. I've been guilty of it. Because the thought is if I'm following this person and they're speeding, they're only going to catch the leader, which is a myth. And again, I've been guilty of that before. It's not the right decision, but people will think that, well, if I follow somebody who's speeding, they're not going to pull over all of us. So again, that's not a gamble worth taking. But some people will travel in packs because they're looking for somebody to break the speed limit with. And that might be a situation where you get more people that do that, and then all of a sudden you have a pack, and now you're going at an illegal speed traveling in a pack. So there's an extra added issue with that. Okay, does that make sense, Lauren? Cool. All right, what else? All right, if not, camera's back on. Let's see your notes. All right, chapter 8 should be open for you to take. Again, as usual, please make sure that you read through each question, read through each of the responses, and choose the best answer for each question. Just a reminder of what we have for tonight. Your assignment is chapter 9. Read and take notes. Tomorrow we'll have the speaker. Your assignment for tomorrow after class is to get the chapter 9 test done and submitted. During the test, I made sure I got those presentations on there. Again, once you're done with the video, write your reflection for the ABATE presentation. Tim Weidenbach's presentation is currently on Google Classroom and the assignment is there. I did put the assignment on for the State Farm insurance presentation, but again, the presentation isn't done yet because we haven't done the recording yet. We're going to take care of that this afternoon. As soon as I can get that video loaded, I will post that onto Google Classroom. So that should be sometime this afternoon. I set all the due dates for tomorrow night. Again, please don't wait until tomorrow night to get all those done. Don't wait until Friday. It's just going to slow down the process of you getting your certificate. So again, if you have any questions on chapter 9, please jump onto Zoom tonight, the office hours from 7 to 8, and I will answer your questions. So anything else for me? All right, if not, have a good day. If I don't see you tonight, I will see you